Great. Well, I want to make sure that we have enough time for the whole program and have time for some questions afterwards. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be part of the conversation. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to this month's edition of the DC Oral History Collaborative Coffee Chat. The Coffee Chat highlights the work of those working to document and preserve Washington stories through oral history. My name is Jasper Collier, and I'm the Oral History Project Manager for Humanities DC, which is the State Humanities Council for Washington, DC. Today's program will be recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Humanities DC YouTube channel. The DC Oral History Collaborative began in 2017 as a partnership between Humanities DC, the DC Public Library, and the DC History Center. Its overarching goal is to encourage DC residents and communities to tell their stories through oral history. The collaborative has done this by documenting existing collections of DC oral histories, providing free public training opportunities, and by offering grants that are supported by additional training and mentorship. To date, the collaborative has supported through its grant programs over 50 projects across the city that have collected over 350 individual interviews. Many of these are already available at the People's Archive at the DC Public Library, where they are accessible through the library's catalog of digital resources, Dig DC. This month's conversation will feature a project called DC Dreamers, Our Voices, Our Stories. Project narrators were interviewed about their daily lives, the causes that are important to them, and their experiences as immigrants, among many other subjects. The project was organized by local nonprofit Hola Cultura, which has for over a decade aimed to defeat stereotypes through innovative storytelling projects. Today, we'll hear from narrators and project team members and share written quotes from their interviews. Please feel free to use the chat throughout the program for comments and discussion. But please use the Q&A feature to ask the questions that you'd like the panel to answer. It just helps us organize those questions a little bit better. But with that, I'll turn things over to Christine McDonald, the Executive Director of Hola Cultura, to introduce this morning's moderator. Christine?
Hi, thank you, Jasper. Yes, I'm Christine McDonald, the co-founder and executive director of Hola Cultura. I edit the work that comes out of the Spell Youth Storytelling Program that was where we produced this project. And I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out. Thank you to the audience for being here to help us celebrate this wonderful oral history project. Thank you to the narrators for sharing your stories. I think we've created, with your help, we have a document that shares the lives of 5 DC connected young people who really find that the DC area is their homes. And I think it really does a public service, this whole project. And I also want to give a shout out to our team members who worked with such dedication and passion to do not only to create all of the parts of an oral history, a formal oral history project, but then they also translated the whole thing and created a beautiful video that you're going to see in a few minutes. So thank you so much to our entire team. And also to the DC Oral History Collaborative for providing the funding that made this project possible. And also training. Another wonderful thing about the collaborative is the very professional training and oral history collection that they do and that our team members were able to take advantage of. And also we're now, this project has inspired a podcast. So we're going to be working on a podcast program over the summer, and we're looking forward to presenting that in the fall, which will use these interviews as the base for it. And we'll continue the conversation. And we're very happy to have Dr. Nancy Maribal here with us, who's going to be the humanities scholar on the project and help us lead it. So thank you to all of you for coming today. And without further ado, I will pass things over to Delia Noriega, who started with us in Hola Cultura in 2018 as an intern and played several different roles. She was the fellow who led the Dreamer story team that created this project and stepped up to be the project manager of the entire project and did a fantastic job with the rest of her team. So Delia, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I'm really happy to be here with all of you, sharing this space, and really looking forward to reflecting on what this was like for you. And yeah, I guess just like what this experience with oral histories has been like. Like Christine said, I've been with Hola Cultura since 2018. And we engaged in like so many different experiences, from doing research to learning about journalistic ethics to doing murals tours, and then also oral history work on top of that. And even though I had been engaged in oral history work before, this was a first time for me in terms of like actually leading a project from beginning to end. And I've realized so many things about the oral history process, and just like the sheer amount of time and care that it really requires. So I'm really happy that you were all part of that. And yeah, I'm gonna popcorn it to everyone so we can just do like quick introductions. So I'll just say a few words about each person, and then I'll popcorn it to someone so you can share a little bit more about yourself, if that's all right. So we have here today Carla Nicole Ramirez, and she's a local middle school teacher, a writer, and a blogger. She came to DC in 2001. And this year she received a master's degree in special education from New York University. We also have today Maria Nunez Pereira, who's a criminal justice student at the University of the District of Columbia. And she's participated in SYEP and has been engaged in with many different organizations, including Hola Cultura. She was a participant last year. We also have Brenda Valeria Perez Amador, who is a local DC community organizer, and she works as a grants manager at the Department of Energy and Environment. And she just graduated with a master's in water resources from UDC, so yay. We also have today Gerson Quinteros. He's also a DC organizer with United We Dream. And he also graduated from the University of the District of Columbia. We have a lot of UDC graduates today. And then we also have our fellows and interns, Dulce, Norma, and Jose, who helped with actually carrying out these interviews from beginning to end and making sure that everything was transcribed and translated. I'm really grateful to you all. And I'll popcorn it to, let me see, Carla.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction, Dalia. Thank you for having me. I am so delighted to be here and so excited to share, my story and hear about your stories as well. And really am so inspired by this project, and truly, I'm having like flashbacks right now about, our conversation back then. So happy how everything's turning out, and I'm so excited to hear everybody else's story. So should I popcorn to somebody else?
Yes, please.
Okay, Maria.
Hi, good morning. My name is Maria. This is actually the first time I'm doing this, so sorry if I'm if I'm a little nervous. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how everything turned out. I haven't seen it, so this is the first time I'm seeing the video and everything. And I'm just excited to hear everybody's story and how everybody's story is different from each other's. And yeah, Brenda?
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Thank you, everybody, for putting this together. Delia, this is incredible. You're really, like a community historian, and thank you, Christine, for like giving Delia and the fellows the tools to be able to do this. Like Maria, I'm also like reminiscing on, when we were sitting down in Delia's couch, just like getting my oral history, and I really appreciate you letting me be so candid. Sometimes when we're doing presentations or projects, the conversation is always like, these are the parameters, this is what we got to talk about. But this was like very like genuine, like tell us about you and like what you want to tell us and what you want to keeping this oral history. So I really appreciate you doing that. And yeah, my name is Brenda Perez. I'm a community organizer. I share in the chat a little bit that I've been organizing since I was 15. And I actually started organizing, or one of the organizing projects was with Gerson. So I'm really excited that, spaces like this keep on bringing us together. And Gerson, I'll popcorn it to you.
Thank you, Brenda. Hi, everyone. My name is Harrison, he, him, his pronouns. I'm a DC resident. And yeah, I'm excited to share my story, be sharing the space with all of y'all, especially with all the firebirds in the house. I'm proud to be on my university and the only public university in DC, and always been so proud of them because they always accepted undocumented youth, regardless. And it's always one of my universities that I'm proud of. And thank you, Dalia, for giving me the opportunity to share my story. It was amazing to share my story with you, and it was really a way that I never been able to share. And it was just really, I always share my story, but the way I shared it with you was way different, and it was amazing. And thank you for putting all of this together. And I'll pass it to Dulce.
Hi everyone, I'm Dulce. I'm very happy to be back and to be able to see all the interns and fellows again. I am very happy to have worked on this project. I want to thank Hola Cultura for letting me be part of the project, for helping out and bringing all these stories to life. And I'm very excited to see the final product and to see the stories and relate to them. And I'll pass it over to Norma.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Norma. I was a Hola Cultura intern last summer and also fall. I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone who participated in this project. It was my first time working like an oral history project, so I did not know what to expect, but I'm really grateful for everyone sharing the stories and, allowing us to create a beautiful project. A huge thank you to Dalia because she was an amazing project leader. Also to Jose, who did a great job on the video, and also Dulce, who was able to help us transcribe the interviews, the long hours interviews. So yes, thank you. I want to popcorn to Jose.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jose, and much like Norma, I was an intern with Hola Cultura last year over the summer and fall. And I am incredibly grateful to have been allowed to be a part of this project. It's something that means a lot to me to help people share their stories. I think there's a lot of value in helping people feel seen. And it was really a privilege to have some sort of insight into all these different lives and their stories. And I'm incredibly happy to have worked with everyone on this, Norma, Dulce, Delia. It's a really great team project, and it was awesome to see it all come together. And I hope that everyone enjoys the video because it was a really enjoyable experience to put it together.
And I think we're just missing Dr. Nancy Mirabal, who is actually leading the podcast series this year.
Right. I'm so sorry. I forgot about passing it over to Nancy.
Forgot about it too. So I just got reminded. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm very excited about seeing this and getting to know everyone. And I'm really excited about the podcast. So thank you again. And yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And next up, we wanted to show you the video that the interns and fellows created around your stories. So if we want to go ahead and play that.
In 2021, Cultura and the DC Oral History Collaborative interviewed 5 young immigrants based in the Washington, D.C. area: Jacinto, Carla, Brenda, Maria, and Gerson. After hours of discussion, we learned about so much more than the impact of their immigrant status. We learned about their families, friends, biggest idols, current goals, favorite foods, most memorable lessons, most persistent regrets, and the way that the summers felt when they were 7, and the way that their siblings laughed whenever they told that one joke.
pero esta clase de filosofía me ayudó también para ver cuáles eran mis valores, para desenvolver mis valores, ¿no? Y cuál era la razón que quería ir a la escuela, ¿no? ¿Por qué quería ir a la escuela? Era como, ¿qué era lo que queríamos, ¿no? ¿Qué tipo de vida queríamos llevar?
I thought that we were just coming to visit, and my grandma was like saying bye to us. Like, I turned around and I was like, don't be sad, grandma. I'm gonna be back. Don't worry. And then my mom was like, she started crying.
A los 10 años nos venimos aquí en DC, en Columbia Heights, a un bloque de la Universidad de Howard.
Ha estado expuesto a esos términos mediante la organización. Varios de los compañeros de ahí tienen DACA y ellos no se identificaban como dreamers. Eran como que más emprendedores, personas de acción. Entonces, una de las cosas también es que yo también dije, no, pues un dreamer es un soñador, ¿no? Y los sueños nada más, si no haces la acción, ahí se queda en el sueño. Entonces, ¿por qué nosotros tenemos que soñar por algo mejor cuando lo podemos hacer? ¿O por qué nos tienen que nombrar como soñadores cuando lo hacemos las cosas?
De hecho, me acuerdo bastante de la escuela, criándome, reflejando un poquito de mi pasado. Me acuerdo que la educación y estar en la escuela siempre me gustaba, porque dije, ok, aquí no hay, si hay problemas, los problemas no son muy grandes. Si pasa algo tengo a alguien a quien decirle. Mis hermanos están aquí y sé que están aprendiendo.
And then I realized that I couldn't go to school because it was very complicated. So we were stuck inside. We couldn't go to school. We were watching novelas the whole day. We were eating cereal with bananas. And then everyone was out at work and we were just so bored. So then we started gaining weight. I remember, like, my sister and I always laugh about this because we really started eating. We would eat so much because we really couldn't go outside, and my aunts were paranoid that something would happen to us if we went outside.
So the first thing that stood out to me in DC was the metro, because you never actually see that in El Salvador. I never took the metro, especially the stairs. That was something new for me, electric stairs. So going to DC, I think the metro was always fascinating to me.
I was scared. I was mostly scared of, like, how would people react to knowing she is not from here. She doesn't have a status, but that makes me me. That makes me Maria. Like, if I wasn't in this circumstance, I wouldn't fight to be good or to be something in life.
One of the questions that I get asked, that we all get asked when we apply to college is, like, who are you, right? Like, and it was like, it's such a lame question because at 17, you don't know who you are. Like, you're still learning. And I remember just, like, being so angry and putting on my Facebook notes and saying, I'm a taco eater machine.
Creo que los valores que me inculcaron fueron de que, pues, sea abierto, ¿no? Mantener la mente abierta, ser amable y, pues, el valor de tratar de salir adelante en la educación, tratar de estudiar más que ellos.
I told people I was immigrant and everything, but I never actually shared my story in a way that they knew that it could inspire and help other undocumented youth. I never knew what it meant to tell your story, because storytelling is a way you can empower others and inspire, and people can connect to your story and understand what they're going through. It's not them only themselves, right?
Thank you, Jasper, and thank you to the interns and fellows who created that video. I know how much time and work went into that, so I really appreciate the effort that you put forth. And we also selected quotes from each of the interviews that kind of stood out to all of us. So we wanted to, I guess, like have a slideshow of the quotes. And I have some guiding questions too, but like if you all want to react to the quotes as well, like you're welcome to. And one of the questions that I was personally really interested in knowing more about was, I guess, like, are there things that you feel that usually fall by the wayside in conversations about our communities that you want people to walk away with from listening to your story? If so, what are those things? And it's just us. So if you want to jump in, or if you guys want me to call on someone, I'm happy to do that as well. Let's see. I guess Brenda, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm like, I would much rather you call on me, you know, because I'm like, I will never say like pick me, but but I guess one of the things that I want folks to take away from when they hear my story is this you know, and from all of the stories, like we're not all the same, you know. If you're expecting the traditional story or like from your imagination of what an immigrant's life is like here in DC, like you're not gonna get that. It's like so diverse, so completely different. And you know, like especially in a place like DC is so diverse, and the Spanish speaking immigrants, you know, are mostly Central American, and I'm Mexican, you know, so I'm like, you know, we have a little bit of everything. So yeah, I wanna be able to have folks take that from my story. Also, you know, like one thing that I've been making sure that I tell people is that, you know, like also this whole idea of like the perfect immigrant, like you're not gonna get it. You know, like some of us have, you know, like criminal background records, you know, some of us are organizers will be like F the government, you know, are not in college or getting masters. So we're doing all sorts of things. And you know, like my thing is like always humanize us, you know, we're a person just like you. You know, like we're here, we're trying to make our lives better, you know, and we deserve that. Those are basic human rights. Like everybody should have the right to migrate to anywhere that they feel safe. um so yeah, that's what I want folks to take away from my story. One more thing, Jacinto said such a cool thing that I really love too. The word dreamer, right? And I'll share a link on little documentary that Gerson and I did called Risers. And it was, you know, like taking away the word dreamer, you know, and say we're rising because we're not dreaming anymore. We're rising to the plate. And yeah, so yeah, that's what I want people to take out of my story. And if you get to hear like my narration from like beginning to end.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And yeah, what you're saying like really resonates with me. I think part of the reason this project was so meaningful for me, it's because it hit so close to home. And definitely one of my personal goals as I took this on was making sure that people realize like we don't all fit in this one box. Everyone's not just immigration story, but just everyone's story is different. So I hope that really comes across. And I guess I'll call on someone. Maria, do you want to say anything like in response to the question? If not, that's okay. I can call on someone else too. Just let me know.
Yeah, can you call on somebody else?
Okay, yeah, no problem. Carla, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think what I want people to take away from is and I love what Brenda said, it's just perfect. And also that, we are very relatable too, like our stories are very relatable as well. And maybe someone out there wants to share their story, right? Be inspired to like start little projects where like people are exchanging stories. I would love my students to hear this one day, especially my Latinx students, and to inspire like a chain of sharing stories or storytelling, because we are a staple of DC. Our stories matter, and so that's what I want people to take away from this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And Gerson, do you want to add anything?
If they take anything, I would say from my story that your story does matter, and it's so powerful, and it can empower so many people. It can bring awareness to an issue. It could tell so much. And storytelling especially in our organization, is important. We have a whole workshop on it and tell each other how we share our story, and then it shows the whole bringing awareness to different issues that our community faces, because immigrants just don't face one issue. We face many issues, because immigration is a Black issue, it's a climate issue, so many issues in it. And so different telling the story bring awareness to many of our backgrounds. And the other thing about DC, our DC stories, I seen that Brenda was in my elementary school when she shared her story. So she went to Bruce Monroe. And then I was reading Maria's, and she went to Paul Public Charter School. So all of us grew with DC. So we grew as DC grew, we grew as well. And we change, we see all the changes that happen in DC, everything. And so we are part of a DC, and we can always say that we're DC natives too. And we love our mambo subs.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and I really hear that, like realizing how interconnected we are. And I think that's also what I enjoy about engaging in this type of work, is being able to connect with people, and you start realizing, oh, like we have been in a lot of the same spaces, or, or maybe we're doing similar work, or I don't know. So thank you so much for that. And right now, so we're just going through these slides of some of the quotes that we selected. And, we did realize like there were different themes. Some of you spoke on your experiences growing up in DC and what that was like going through the DC public school system. I also saw that there were other themes like, talking about gentrification and what that looks like. And even like engaging in public service work. So I don't know, I mean, if you want to react to the quotes, like please feel free. But I guess in the meantime, like I also have another question of why do you participate in oral histories? Or I guess what value do you see in sharing this your story in this way? I know some of you have already been have already engaged in other forms of storytelling, whether it's through writing, blogging, or even through like some of you, your organizing work. So yeah, I wanted to know like, why an oral history? What made you want to participate?
I can go. Well, this was actually my first time ever doing like a storytelling. I've never really spoken about my story to anybody. And so I think it was really important for me to tell my story, because again, everybody's story is different. So it's like, I don't know, it's just I felt like I have been not talking about my status and like not talking about my story, because nobody really talks about it. or like nobody's like, hey Maria, like tell me your story. So I think it was a good opportunity, and it just felt amazing being asked, what's your story? Like, what's your background? Um, so yeah, that's what made me want to do this.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Oh, Carla, did you raise your hand?
But I can go. I remember seeing it on Instagram, and then I was like, oh, that sounds super, super cool, super interesting. So then I messaged somebody. I messaged you, I think. I don't know, but everything just went so smoothly. And then I was sitting on your couch and like telling you my story, and like it was so cool to just sit there for hours and just not, and really like process my life. Really, it was so interesting. And then I realized just how important my story is and how important our stories are, because we are a staple of DC. We're a staple of this country. So if more of us speak about our story, then we can really recreate how our images and how our stories are being told. So I'm really thankful for this experience.
Thank you, Carla. And someone in the comments said, I appreciate the opportunity to gain insight into the lives of those expressed here in this project. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else want to say anything in terms like of oral history work, or why participate in this type of work?
Yeah, I can say something about that specifically. And again, thank you, Delia, for taking the time to sitting down with us for hours. I remember, I think my interview or my oral history narration took like 6 hours in total. I'm not even sure. But it's so incredible. I was just talking to somebody a little bit about the stories and the history that does survive, and why is it that we're reading certain books and certain authors, and why we keep on hearing the stories over and over again. And it was a conversation about like Greek mythology, and I asked, like, why don't we have like Mexica mythology, or like Lenca mythology, or like Andean mythology? Like, why didn't those stories survive? And like a lot of like my histories, the way that I remember my life in Mexico is through these oral histories. And the reasons why I know about my great grandmother's parents is because of the stories that she would tell me about them growing up. And just like oral history is such a powerful way to pass down those details, that otherwise wouldn't be captured. And so I really, yeah, I'm like still, like sitting down with all of this, and like, like reading all of the quotes, like all of the information that you were able to gather. It's really incredible. And yeah, to be able to sit down with you, and like the care and detail that you were able to get out from us, that's so incredible. There was also a quote that Carla put you put from Carla's oral history, and she talked about identities, and like her transition of like saying, oh well, I'm from Maryland, DC, to I'm like a Bolivian woman. That's so incredible. I think like identity is such a powerful thing, and this is one of the things that or this project was really able to help me think about my own identity, and really think critically of like, how do I want to go, how do I want to be passed down as in history? Do I want to be passed down as this like just like this Mexican person, or like an indigenous, like Mexica proud woman who migrated here to DC and is now a proud Mexican Washingtonian? So yeah, I'm still, and as I'm talking, I'm like mostly reflecting. But yeah, I really appreciate that we can have these oral histories, it's inspiring me to think about like what other, like record my grandma and record like all of these stories and like write them down. And yeah, just like really thinking about identity and how this process, like helped me, think about some of those very critical things about myself. So it's, like it's beneficial both ways. It's beneficial for the sake of collecting history, but then for us as the folks that you were interviewing to like really think about our identity and our story and how do we tell it and how do we share it.
Thank you, Brenda. I really hear that, especially well, since you're speaking on like reflecting on your life and identity, I feel like this project also in a way gave me the room to be able to do that for myself too. Like it really prompted me to start reflecting more seriously about my life, because I feel like I hadn't really given myself the space to do that. And then hearing you all share just different aspects of your life also reinforced my reasons for engaging in oral history work, which is like these memories are so important. And yeah, and sometimes if we don't like necessarily document them or even just pass them down by like just sharing with other people, and whether it's our friends or family, like it can get lost. Because I even started thinking about the fact that I'm not that familiar with my family history, and we don't necessarily have like a lot of things to rely on to like really dig deeper, other than like the people who are still around, right? So it's mostly by word of mouth and things like that. And so it's really amazing when you can also preserve like a moment in time. And we also have questions in the chat. Someone is asking, what were your parents' expectations of you and how did those expectations make you feel? So I don't know if anybody wants to share a little bit about that.
I can go. Well, my parents' expectations were, and there still is, just to be, how do I say this? To be successful. Like that's their expectation, is to strive in school, to like be the honor roll kid, to not get in trouble, to just be this perfect kid. And having those expectations did so bad to my mental health. And nobody really talks about it. I think that's a big problem, especially in the community, which you have your parents' expectations, but if you can't exceed them, it's you have like this weight on your shoulders. So especially in high school, I had that weight on my shoulders, which was if I wasn't getting honor roll, or if I wasn't gonna go to college, I was gonna be a major disappointment to my parents, and it was gonna be upsetting because they didn't, leave their country just for me to not succeed. But I still go through with that every day. I think I'm probably gonna have those expectations till the day that I not here anymore. And yeah, I mean, having those expectations is really hard, and a lot of people don't really talk about it. But yeah.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, I really hear you. And yeah, one of the things that stood out to me in your oral history, and that I'm really grateful that you spoke out about, was mental health, which is, fortunately, it's something that's becoming more normalized. But at the same time, it's like, even though it's becoming more normalized to talk about it, unfortunately, like, the lack of resources is still a huge issue, and like, lack of resources to address mental health. But yeah, does anybody else want to respond to that question? Oh, and somebody else asked another question. But yeah, if anybody wants to add to that question before I ask the next one, please feel free.
I think there's always expectation when you immigrate with your parents, like when your parents, when you are with here, when your parents immigrated, to be successful. And my parents at least, education is important. Not because, many of them didn't have that opportunity back at their home. They didn't have the opportunity to go to school, to finish their college, because they have to actually work. They had to be the provider for their family. And I think that's where they come in and they're like, oh, I want you to graduate. Like, I want you to do this. Like, my mom had a high expectation for me to graduate from college. And I checked that list off. And now she's like pushing me for my master's degree. So I have already high expectation and everything's being pushed to. And I think it's always that education is key for them to be successful. And I think when I was started to like also the expectation not to get in trouble. And so the thing when I started to organize was different, because organizing is good trouble. Uh, you get to do things to go against the government, to put your stories out there and share everything, and stand up for something that you believe in. And that's good trouble for even though sometimes when you're organizing, I think it was hard for me when I was started to organize, explain what I did to my parents, because they don't sometimes they didn't understand what I was. They're like, you're doing what? You're just going out there, you're being in front of a building protesting. What's that gonna happen? What is gonna? And so it was a lot of explaining, and I think their expectation was high, but now then they see how success is differently and it could work in different ways. And I think being an organizer has always been that expectation of education is key, and I always bring it in myself too, because of my mom.
Yeah, thank you, Gerson. Does anybody else want to add to that question? We also have a couple more questions that I can ask. Okay, somebody else in the chat asked, what keeps you still elevated and hopeful when sharing your stories, especially for Gerson and Brenda, who I have known for 1,000 years?
Yeah, I saw who asked. It was someone who's been an incredible mentor. Also, UDC Firebird, has been keeping an eye on me and Gerson to make sure that we're doing well at UDC, but also that we continue to organize. And I think what keeps me elevated is and I talked a little bit about in one of the quotes, but when Gerson and I started sharing our stories, we were so scared. We were like, like, this is what the DACA movement looks like. Yeah, it was really scary, but we did it because we were like, we could see the end goal. We were like, we want to be able to inspire young people because we're scared, but we need to fight. We need to continue to fight for our liberation, and it's scary, but we have to do it. Nobody else can do it for us. Nobody else knows what we know. Nobody else is an expert on our lives besides us. So, like, we were able to share those stories and seeing the people that got inspired by those stories and then continue and then start their own movements or join our struggles, it was really incredible. When we talk about, like numbers is power, I feel like I was able to see that, and to be able to organize with younger folks and to mentor them and tell them and hold them and say, it's okay, like we're doing this, we're in this together. On the fight for art collective liberation, that's really beautiful. And like especially after the pandemic, when the Black Lives Matter movement started to really like take over the streets literally, it was really incredible. And like it just got me so excited again. And to see especially this organizer in DC, Joella Roberts, who is from Trinidad and Tobago, and she's like really has been tying these two movements together, the immigration movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. And that to me is just like incredible. I'm like, it tells me like this is what we fought for. This is, why Gerson and I did everything that we did in order to be able to put the stepping stones so that younger folks like Joella can, like take up that space because it's her space. So it makes me so happy. And for queer undocumented youth to take on the streets and say, we're here, look at us. And for, young immigrants to talk about mental health and how hard it is, to be undocumented and talk about all that pressure and to normalize it and to not just like put it away, in a closet, just like how we were taught to, it's so incredible. So seeing this intersectionality, seeing more people in solidarity with one another is just so, so incredible. And, like at the end of the day, that's what collective solidarity looks like. And to be able to see it in my lifetime is so gratifying to the work that, like some of us have done to inspire that movement, and to see it keep on going and grow. It's just so incredible. So that's, long story short, that's what keeps me going. Just continue to see young people just like take on the streets, just like Gerson said, like organizing, which is also like the good kind of trouble. So that's what keeps me going every day.
Well, for me, what keeps me moving and hopeful, especially during, it was hard when it was a Trump era, when it was Trump who every single day was an attack on immigrants. And we still, of course, we're still seeing the side effects of Trump and the courts, and we're still seeing that there's always an attack. But what keeps me hopeful is the youth who I share my story with, and they come out to me and say, I'm undocumented for the first time. Or when a youth comes out and starts to take on the mic, instead of me actually chanting over, they now are chanting, and you see the next generation taking on what they are gonna do for a change. Because I know that change won't happen overnight, but it will happen over years. And sharing my story to inspire others and to empower others is what keeps me hopeful, and seeing that change little by little. It may not be a win in the citizenship in one, but it may be small wins in locally or nationally, or even a small win where a student comes out for the first time at the age of 27. It's one those little tiny little wins that are always keeps me hopeful and keep me motivated. And I think we also see victories in other countries in immigration, like Ireland, who won citizenship for their undocumented youth over there. So it's amazing, and I continue to see those victories that keeps me hopeful, and that one day we can actually win citizenship for undocumented youth in the United States.
Yeah, thank you, Gerson and Brenda. Yeah, and we have another question, but I don't know if anybody else wants to answer to that question as well, of what keeps you elevated and hopeful when sharing your stories. or I can also ask the, excuse me, the next one, which is, have you had opportunities to participate in the larger surrounding community that you live in? And if so, how or what?
I can, not really, because as I was growing up, I was told to not say anything. It's kind of like if it has not, if like to just mind your business, and stay quiet. So I've always had that, like I've always wanted to, but just kind of I was taught to stay silent, because you didn't want to get in trouble. And as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that I cannot stay silent anymore. That's what they want. And I haven't had an opportunity yet, but I definitely would love to.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. And does anyone else want to answer to or respond to either of those questions of what keeps you elevated and hopeful when sharing your story, or if you've had opportunities to participate in the larger surrounding community that you live in?
Well, what keeps me elevated and hopeful is knowing that I am inspiring the next generation of young teenagers. I mean, I am a teacher, so I guess in a way I am participating in a larger community by being involved in education, and helping, very close to my Latinx students and like very close to like immigrant students. So I think that's what makes me hopeful and also keeps me elevated, and also, I'm able to like make more changes within the education system. So yes, and power to the teachers for sure. And we need more teachers. So if you want to be a teacher, let's all be teachers together.
Yeah, there was one, I was reading Gerson's quotes, and in one of his quotes, he's talking about the, like in his school, it was mostly Central Americans and African Americans. And throughout his like education career, before UDC, of course, because we have a lot of teachers of color, but before that, like there was a majority white teachers, to be able to have, like brown teachers, to be able to have students and look at the professor and say, oh, like, like that could be me. That's incredible. So yeah, we definitely appreciate our teachers. So Carla, huge kudos to you and for being a teacher in the pandemic. Like it must not be easy. So yeah, all the power to you.
Thank you. I'll add one comment from what you said about like representation. Growing up, I didn't have any Hispanic teachers. I had a Spanish teacher who didn't really speak Spanish, and so it was hard for me to communicate, with my teachers or for them to understand who I was. So in a way, I was in ESL class, or I took ESL classes for 2-3 years, and then that was my introduction to the United States, and all the students in my class were from different parts of the world. We had someone from Greece, Russia, Central America. So it was so beautiful to be surrounded by so many different identities. But then once I stepped outside of that class and into the mainstream classes, it was horrible because I was quiet. But once I was in ESL, I could be myself. And I think my multicultural identity also stems from there. And also my, and I guess I can speak in general, because I think you all can relate to this. Our understanding of different cultures, our empathy also stems from being in this class and surrounded by so many different cultures. So that's what keeps me going, knowing that, the other day, a young, Latina girl student came up to me and said, I am so thankful that you look like me. And then, that was it for me, just like bawling hysterically, because that's what we need. We need more teachers of color. We need more representation in the classroom.
Yeah, thank you, Carla. Yeah, I really hear that. And I was also wondering, well, one of my questions was, were there any like memories that you shared in your oral history that like maybe kind of surprised you, like maybe like you weren't expecting, oh, I was gonna talk about that, and yeah, like any stories or memories that you found were significant?
Well, for me, it was mostly what I spoke about in terms of my mental health. That was something that I wasn't really expecting to talk about, since it was something that a lot of people didn't really know. So it was like the first time me speaking about it. But I realized why I kind of did it. Like, I want people, or I want immigrant youth to know that they're not they're not alone in terms of mental health. Like, there are other people that have the same status and are going through mental health problems. So yeah, that was something that I was really surprised in talking about.
Yeah, I will add to Maria's point, because I think the conversation, or the first time that I sat down for this oral presentation was with Norma and Delia. And I think at one point I told you guys, I was like, this is like very like therapeutic, to like be able to talk about like your whole life story and to have guided questions. And I know that Delia and I had a couple of like side conversations about like the importance of like going to therapy, and like therapy for our parents, and therapy together. So that was also really powerful. And I've been spending a lot of time with Indigenous communities, working with them, going through ceremony, spending time with elders. And there was one teaching that I learned from one of these elders, who said that when it comes to trauma, especially, like trauma is also generational. So it's not only the trauma or the mental health, or our mental health, that we have to work on, but also work on our or like be conscious that like it is also being impacted by your parents' trauma. And when you're going through therapy, or when you're helping yourself, then you're also helping those who came before you and those who will come after you. There is also this really powerful way of looking at generations, which is looking at the 7 generations. And a lot of people think, or a lot of people, some Indigenous communities say, you have to do things 7 generations from now. But there are others and that explain it as like, there is 7 generations and you're in the middle. So 3 generations before you, like that's what it's affecting you now, and whatever you do is going to affect 3 generations after you. So you have to really be really conscious about it. That's one of the things that you know, kept on coming up throughout this conversation, you know, like just like me thinking about like the impact that I'm gonna have, my story and how my parents' decisions impacted me. I've been reading my quotes and reading a lot about like social justice and like the social movement, and like really criticizing it, and like criticizing DACA and, you know, like the Dream Act. So I'm always, you know, like trying to like think critically. And I think this like project like really allowed me to do that. Because at first I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk about my story, you know, like immigration is beautiful, you know, like the movement is great, you know, we gotta keep on going. But as I'm reading the quotes, I'm like, you know, like the movement has to be better. The Dream Act, you know, has to be better, you know, like abolish this term dreamers, you know, like we're all like not dreaming anymore. And you know, we got to be more intersectional, and you know, like we can't just rely on nonprofits. It has to be, you know, like people power. So I found myself doing a lot of that, a lot of like critical thinking, you know, and a lot of, and you know, like again, just like being, you know, like unfiltered, and talk about like gentrification also, you know, which is really incredible. So that's what I was not expecting to do, you know, to have like all of these like epiphanies, and like be able to think about, and to be allowed to, you know, like criticize some of these things just like openly, because you know, like in the end, like this is us, this is like, you know, like aside from like this is like me, you know, I'm not putting a presentation together with all of these filters. This is like me, what's on my brain. So sorry again, I'm like, as I'm talking, I'm reflecting. But yeah, again, thank you Dalia for putting this together, because I know it's not easy to hear me rant for 6 hours.
No, thank you so much, Brenda, because yeah, no, I really appreciated how down to earth you were when you were answering some of the questions. I know like it can get like, it's like you can't separate the personal, right, from the political. And I think that, yeah, I really appreciated all of you for being so down to earth, and so forward with the way you share your stories. But yeah, does anyone else have anything that, like, I guess they were surprised by, that, you know, maybe they weren't expecting on sharing, or a highlight of your oral history that you remember?
I think from my end, I remember like usually when I share my story or I do any presentation like that, to tell my story, I usually talk about like the challenge I had as an undocumented immigrant. I share my journey coming to here, and then I ended with my graduating and going into the movement. But it was really when you asked me about like what was your first experience, like things about, and I talked about the escalators because that was the impact for me. I, you know, that difference of I never taken the metro, I never taken this, like it never a thing that I share about my story, and it was so different. And then also sharing about like me being at the first time, well, in 2012 when 2011, sorry, when the Dream Act got introduced. That was something that stories that I don't share usually, but it was able to be shared with you, the life.
I shared a lot about my childhood, and you know, my childhood in Bolivia, which was, I wasn't expecting to like share so much about that, and that sort of opened so many memories. You know, I unlocked like my secret memories, and I remember just talking and talking, just being, we were there for like 3 hours, and you know, between the ages of like 5 and 10, just like talking. And then yeah, I was very surprised, and so I had the chance to relive so many of these memories that I had, you know, locked in a box. So it was a beautiful thing. Thank you again. Really, like what a great project. I mean, I'm so happy, and again, very grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carla. And if anyone else wants to add anything in response to that question, please feel free. But we also wanted to like direct some questions for the interns and fellows who participated in the project, and as well for Dr. Nancy Mirabal to see like, I guess, get your insights on why it's important to engage in this kind of work, or even like the importance of these particular stories. And I can also call on someone, or if somebody wants to volunteer. Again, the interns and fellows who worked on the project were Jose, Dulce, and Norma.
Well, I can go. I think for me, it was very important to work on this project because of the whole storytelling aspect, because I know that, you know, by sharing our own stories, others can get like others can relate, and then that'll make them open up about their stories. As I was transcribing and translating some of these stories, I would stop, you know, the audio, and I would really reflect on my own story. And you know, hearing some of the things that they were sharing, I would notice that most of the like growing up, I wouldn't share a lot. I wouldn't open up about my situation, just because I don't know, I was a little bit embarrassed of, you know, being undocumented, of all that, because of the stigma that surrounds it. But you know, this project really helped me to open up more, to reflect on my story, and it allowed me to relate to a lot of the stories. So I definitely think that doing projects like this can help others, you know, relate, and it can help them open up about their own situation.
Oh, I can go next. For me, doing this project and also being a storyteller myself, I realized the importance of like listening, because I was able to be in an interview with Brenda and Carla, and being present in that conversation and actually listening to their stories was very like fascinating to me. I was able to learn about themselves, their experience, and I was able to like reflect upon my own experience as well. So that's one thing that I took away from this project. It's like the importance of listening, the importance of being present when people are like telling their stories.
Certainly, I would agree very much with what Norma and Dulce were saying. And Brenda asked the question about what keeps us going as historians. And I think that's an interesting question for myself, because I studied history at the University of California in Santa Cruz. And the reason history has always fascinated me is just because of the insight it provides into our nature and how we interact with one another. But doing this project, what I found was really valuable was when somebody goes ahead and tells you their life in such a thorough way, there's going to be something that they say that is going to be relatable to someone in a way that really helps them feel like they may not be alone in whatever experience they may have. And I think when we get insight into those who are brave enough to share their stories, not only do we feel like perhaps we're not alone in ours, but we feel more emboldened to embrace whatever our identity is once we see somebody else who shares it with us. And I think that's a real great value of something as thorough as an oral history.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think for me, in terms of what keeps me going, I feel like it's imagining how we can do this better and continue to improve on our practices when we engage in this work. Because I know, like, also storytelling in general can be like there might be harms and risks associated with it. So for me, it's always about like continuing to rethink how we can reduce that harm or minimize it. Yeah, because it was even surprising for me, like the level of detail that all of you shared. And so I know it can be easy to like make yourself vulnerable in that way. So I'm really grateful that you felt comfortable enough to do that with me and with us, and I guess with the community at large. Now this is becoming a publicly accessible record. And also for me, the other thing that keeps me going is, I guess, wanting to continue to do this work because it helps me also get a better understanding of myself and where I fit in this ecosystem, in this community, right? So yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it's always about like being able to continue to connect the dots of where I fit in, even just within DC and the DMV, and then also making sure that we're uplifting the stories of people that whose stories are typically silenced, right? Or about things that we may not necessarily learn when we attend school or institutions of higher education. So those are, yeah, two of the biggest things for me. And Nancy, I don't know if you wanted to also share a little bit or.
Yes, of course. So I'll just say a few things that, first of all, I so enjoyed hearing the stories, reading the quotes, and this is a really amazing project. So congratulations to everyone. I know how hard it was to do this work. And I just want to say that you're not only sharing your experiences and your history, you're actually creating an archive, right? A historical record, which is so key in that it's a historical record and archive almost establishes visibility. It's a way of saying that your histories are important, that they matter, and they also allow for people in the future to come back and say, oh, this is how they experienced immigration, being undocumented, living in DC. All of those histories are important. So oftentimes we think because we don't have an archive that we don't have a history. But in fact, the archives oftentimes don't include communities like ours. And that's why oral histories are so important, right? Our stories are so important. So congratulations for this beautiful project and for creating a historical archive for now and for the future. And that was it for me.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for also like collaborating with Hola Cultura to continue to do this work.
No, I'm honored. I cannot wait. So very excited.
Yeah, and does anyone else have any other questions, either for the interns, fellows, for the narrators?
I have a question for the fellows and you, Delia. I'm not familiar, so I know that I see that there's a lot that went into putting these oral histories together. It looks like it wasn't just like, let me record you and that's it, we're gonna put this recording somewhere. So can you tell us a little bit more about like, and I don't know anything about, like recording history, especially oral history. So yeah, what is it like to record somebody, like what goes behind the scenes? I saw that you transcribed some things. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about what that process looks like for somebody that doesn't know.
Yeah, for sure. So for this particular project, I wasn't necessarily involved in like the initial stages of like the conceptualizing and then like applying for the grant. I remember one day like Christine told us the news, right? Like, oh, we got approved for this grant for another oral history project. So that was exciting. And so I came in later once we were getting ready to like start to do outreach. So that's one of the things, right? Like actually reaching out to people and I guess letting them know what this is all about, why it matters, why their story matters. Because that's the other thing, right? Like sometimes people are surprised and they're like, wait, why would you want to document my story? But yeah, it does matter, right? Like for the reasons that we already shared and that Nancy just shared as well. And that, excuse me, that in itself can take some time. So in that sense, it can be a little bit tricky, right? Because when you're tied to, for example, grant deadlines, that constitutes its own like constraints, whether it's time constraints, sometimes like limited resources, right? So it's about also knowing how to work with what you have. And then once you know who wants to participate, it's also about getting to know the person before the interview a little bit, right? So that can entail like doing research on that particular person, if there's anything about them out there, or just like having a one-on-one and trying to get to know them and understand what are the things that matter to you, right? Like what is it that you want to make sure gets preserved? And is this right for you? Because I think it's also about that, right? Like figuring out if this is the space where you want to share your story, figuring out if maybe you want to look at other ways of doing this. And then figuring out also like how to have an outline of questions that is not necessarily, like you said, Brenda, is not necessarily like, these are the questions and this is what I'm going to ask you, but it's more how can we guide the conversation and make sure that we're highlighting the themes that you want to focus on about your life. I feel like I did have a chance to meet with all of you beforehand, although I know that can be tricky. So I really hope that the themes that you wanted to highlight are in there. And then, yeah, other than that, like it also takes time in terms of making sure that we're creating an accessible archive, because oral histories do have to get transcribed. Excuse me. And then in this case, we also wanted to make sure that we were even more accessible by translating all of the interviews, so that more people have access to them, right? So there's like, I don't know, there's all these components. I can't really encompass it all right now. But yeah, without like giving too many details, I guess that's the idea. But yeah, if Dulce or Jose or Norma want to add to that, because you guys were so involved in the process also, like, please, like, feel free to add. Or even Christine, like, maybe you can tell us a little bit more what goes behind the actual, like, designing and researching the subject matter before presenting this to, for example, DC Oral History Collaborative.
I can tell you that this project was the brainchild of Miriam Austria, who was a longtime volunteer with us at Hola Cultura, and she'd helped us with a number. We've done a number of oral history projects here in at Hola Cultura. We did one about tamales when we had our Tamal Fest. Of course, we've done them on more serious topics as well. The Tamal Fest one was very fun, but we've also done them about Latino settlement patterns and gentrification in DC. We did one on indigenous languages that are spoken here, because there were so many indigenous languages spoken here in the Washington area. And this one, just especially because of everything that was in the news, it seemed like an important topic for us to take on. And so, when she came up with the idea, we ran with it. And then it was very interesting after we got the grant, and maybe Dalia can talk a little bit about this. We realized that there was this rapidly, the rapid changes happening right between the time we got the grant, or we were writing the grant and the grant, and we were going to start the project, in which there was this kind of interesting and important, I think, pushback against the concept of the dreamer and the perfect immigrant that people have touched on here. And so we, talking with Dalia and the rest of the project team, we quickly made some adjustments so that we would be encompassing. Of course, we are journalists, right? We are in historians, oral historians. We want to make sure that we're correctly, telling the moment. Telling things the way they are today. So we had to think about how we would do it, and so that we wouldn't exclude dreamers, but at the same time we would make it broader than just dreamers, which I think has really enriched this project and really helped to capture this moment in history that we are right now. And I don't know, Dalia, why don't you, maybe if you have anything else you want to add about that?
Yeah, no, you're completely right. From the minute, I guess from the beginning, yeah, it was about thinking like, how can we make this more encompassing? So you're right about that. And it was also kind of like figuring out how we can, I don't know how to explain it, like make it more open-ended, so we're not just following the same media narratives that we've been seeing, if that makes sense. But I really feel like that comes like directly from the narrators, right? Like of you all telling us like, this is what, these are the points that I want to make sure get included. Like, this is what I want to talk about. So that part is really important, of like being able to have that agency to say like, this is what I'm going to share, and having control of like how it's presented, right? Yeah.
Does anyone on the project team want to talk about the process of transcribing and creating the index and then translating the whole thing? I mean, you guys did a lot of work, and it had to be done in a very detail-oriented and responsible fashion. So I think that's a big and important part of an oral history collection as well. So anybody have any recollections or insights to share?
I will say though, when you're so close to the subject matter, like when there's that like personal connection, it can be challenging at times. I know it was challenging for me at times, right? Because there are definitely many aspects of the memories that they shared that resonated with me personally. And so it's like Dulce said, like I would be transcribing or translating, and then I would have to like come to a full stop and like, I don't know, I would just start, like it would trigger memories in me, right? And so in that sense, like it made me reflect a lot. So I did have to pause a lot. And yeah, it's not necessarily a straightforward process where you're just like, okay, I'm going to transcribe for a whole hour. It's like a lot of times you have to pause and also take care of yourself, right? Because if this is bringing up things that are making you reflect or making you relive things or things like that, like it's a very, yeah, like you can try and distance yourself, but in many ways it's a very personal thing. I don't know how to explain it. So yeah, I had to pause a lot just to take care of myself, I will say that.
Yeah, just one thing. I think that's so beautiful, you know, because then we're not treated as just like subjects, like, oh, I'm like analyzing this like specimen. Then it changes the story to like, okay, I'm like collecting the story of an individual who has, you know, like a very similar experience, or where we can draw similarities. And like you're able to like humanize each other and not just talk about like the way that I see my people portrayed in like history books, for in like a more like human, holistic way that makes sense. So I love that point that you made, Delia.
From my experience, it was my first time ever like participating in an oral history project. So for me, the transcribing was very like, at first it was hard, but then I got like used to it. It's more like I got more into it, because I majored in journalism. So I think it's kind of similar to like, you know, interviewing someone and like asking questions. In oral history, you really have to treat the interview as like a conversation, you know, because these people are telling their life story. So you really have to be empathetic towards that person and like, you know, just treat them as like, as Brenda mentioned, like treat them as a human. Like we all human beings, so like let's just be empathetic with each other. Um, the transcribing was very like, there was like a certain format that you have to follow, that I had to learn. And we did like a workshop with the team where we had to like, there was these like certain steps and sort of like format you have to follow for oral history. And I remember there was a person who came in who's an expert in the oral history aspect, and she had taught us like a lot of, you know, different tools that we can use and different like, you know, things we have to be aware of. So I think that was very helpful as well. And I definitely did learn a lot, you know, in terms of like oral history, how to like make it oral history.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're nearly coming to an end, so I don't know if like Jose or Dulce, do you want to add anything?
For me, just adding in the process of transcribing, like you mentioned, I did have to stop a lot and reflect when I was listening to the audio, because I just related a lot to most of the stuff that I was hearing. And also with translating, it was a difficult process because it was not just like translating from English to Spanish, but I wanted to find the correct words, the correct like order to still keep the emotions that they were like, if they were talking in Spanish and emitting a certain emotion, I wanted to translate that to English, but still keep the same like emotion that they were, you know, sharing. So that was definitely interesting. And I really learned a lot from transcribing and translating these interviews.
Yeah, I just want to add it was an incredibly valuable resource to navigate through the transcriptions when it came to editing the video together, to use a search function and to type in a word like life and then see wherever the word life was mentioned and coming across some really powerful, interesting quotes. Something along those lines was really valuable in helping shape the video and finding quotes that not only resonated but really captured a theme. And when you're working with a video that it's going to be 5 minutes max, you want to do the most with the time that you do have. And I really appreciated working with the transcriptions and finding those highlights. And you know, you type in education and everything that comes up in all these interviews is really valuable and insightful. And it was really enlightening experience. And as a fellow immigrant myself, who is first generation, it was really powerful just to see my story in other people's lives.
Yeah, thank you, Jose and Dulce. And yeah, and I just wanted to say, like, you all reminded me of why I continue to engage in this work, and yeah, just keep thinking of like how to do it better every time. And also like it made me reflect a lot on how can we build capacity within our own communities to carry out this work, right? Because I feel like we can't always depend on institutions or organizations or like initiatives or wait for funding, right, to be able to do it. So I think I've started to think more and more about how can we build that capacity within our own communities. So yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you all for that and for coming today, making time and space for, yeah, I guess to present on this project and make sure people know it's accessible. And I don't know if Christine, like, do you want to say any last words or anybody else?
Well, I'll just reiterate that thank you, everyone. I'm so proud of our story team and the narrators for sharing their stories. And it's been great to share this with the public. Again, we have the transcripts. They're live now on our site. So if you want to read the whole story of these 5 wonderful people, you can find them on our site. And the video is also live. And the library will be publishing the audio transcripts. And when they're live, we'll also provide a link from our site to that in the fall. And again, stay tuned, everyone, for the podcast. And if anybody wants to get involved in the podcast, you're welcome. So let me know. And I would just end this with a little plug for Hola Cultura. As you know, we're a very small nonprofit. We do a lot with very few funds. But if anybody is looking for a worthy cause to donate to, please consider Hola Cultura. We really do rely on donations from individuals as well. And without having a broad base of support in the community, it's difficult to continue doing this work. So please, when you're giving donations, please consider Hola Cultura and also work with us. If you want to join our spell program, we're recruiting again for the fall, and the program is for young people from 16 to 25, but we often have adult volunteers. So if you're over 25, but you're really inspired to do this kind of work, there's a place for you at Hola Cultura too. We're like a Latino family. We're multi-generational, multicultural, different colors, different backgrounds. We embrace that all here. So if you want to get involved, we'd love to have you as well. Thank you, everybody. And if anybody else has a final comment, please jump in now.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone. And I just want to say, like, you guys, everyone here inspires me to, to tell these stories and to be able to, tell my own story as well. So a huge thank you to everyone for being such a great inspiration.
Just want to reiterate a similar sentiment. Thank you to everyone here. Thank you for this project. And it really helped emphasize to me just the value of storytelling, and it's very powerful. So thank you so much, everyone.
I agree. This is a great way to start the Memorial Weekend. So everyone have a wonderful Memorial Day long weekend. And we will see you again soon. I hope we will have an event in the midsummer for those of you here in DC, and we'll continue, join us. We have Spanish language posts every Monday, and when we have Hola Cultura, when we have the Spell Youth stories to publish, we publish them on Thursday. So drop by and check out the new content. We'll keep going, keep publishing new stories.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Take care.
Bye.
Okay,
Have a good
have a good
weekend.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.